So again, just to get started, if you don't mind, just to give our audience an idea of who you are, your educational journey, anything you want to share about yourself or Midland, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, so my name is Hannah Nelson. I'm the head of school at Midland in Los Olivos, California. This is my first headship and my second year at this school here. So I've been working towards being a head of school for the last, oh gosh, 20-year journey through education, doing just about every other job in a bunch of different schools, whether it was at the front desk or teaching math or teaching science or dean of academics, you name it, I've pretty much done it in schools. I've always really been drawn to schools that have a nature-based and experiential ed focus and feel like I totally hit the jackpot with Midland. I actually didn't know that Midland existed until this job opportunity arose.
What?
One of my goals is to make Midland more widely known because it is such a treasure. I mean, it's a super small 9 through 12 boarding school, boarding only. So, no day students. Our program is really all in, hands-on. Live simply, learn deeply, and try and connect authentically. So we've got an almost 3,000 acre campus, and then we have a lot of our signature programs that are really connected to the land that are very hands-on, nature-based. So we have a 10-acre organic farm that provides half of the food that our students eat. We've got over 20 horses. Anybody is able to ride regardless of their ability. We have an amazing outdoor leadership program where students can get out onto the land hiking, backpacking, climbing, mountain biking, and then also leading other students out on the property to go backpacking and camping without adults as well.
Wow.
So really kind of leaning into independence and healthy risk taking for all. And of course, on top of that, we also have amazing academics, like most amazing boarding schools do. We use competency-based education, and so students are really able to dive deep into their learning, thinking about skills rather than just historical content, knowing that we all have supercomputers in our pockets these days. It's nice to think about, how can we help increase students' skills so that they can apply that across disciplines. And I feel really, really fortunate to be here.
That's awesome. Thank you for that. And Hannah, if you don't mind, just in terms of the school itself, where are your students coming from? You mentioned boarding only. Are they
Yep.
sort of local to California, nationwide,
Yeah.
international?
Yeah, totally. So I'd say most of our students are from California. We do
Okay.
have a small international population. One of the things that I learned about boarding school is that most families really like to be within a day's travel of their students. So
Got it.
whether that is a direct flight, which may be people coming from out of state. So we've got some folks from Denver, from Las Vegas. There's some awesome direct flights to Santa Barbara from those places. But we have a ton of folks from the Bay Area, from LA, from San Diego, and then the Pacific Northwest as well. So like Seattle, Portland area. And we have about 15% international students mostly from China, some from Taiwan, South Korea, Honduras. But yeah, mostly folks from California. And we're looking to expand as well. So thinking about where in the country might people be values aligned and want to be having education that Midland provides, even if they are, say, on the East Coast or something like that. So
Right, right. No, that's fantastic. So I think one of the word that pops in my mind is this idea of culture, school culture. I think just based on that introduction, it seems to me that Midland has carved out a unique identity, if you will.
yeah,
How would you describe, and pretend I'm a prospective parent, how
sure.
would you describe to me sort of the school culture? Because again, the 3,000 acre campus, the organic farm, to me, it seems like a pretty idyllic place. But again, every
Yeah,
school, I think, has its own unique school culture. So talk to me a
sure.
little bit about the actual school culture there.
Yeah, definitely. I'd say it's very student centered. And what I mean is that by that is that we are really looking at how can we give students opportunities for real, authentic leadership and purpose throughout the day, throughout the weeks, throughout the years that they're here. So one of the things that we do is we have a jobs program. What that means is that students are doing all of the work on campus. So we have zero staff that are cleaning our classrooms or anything like that. It's all students. So every single student has their own job that they need to do, whether that is being a waiter or working in dish house or in the kitchen or cleaning a classroom. And that involves also chopping the wood to heat the wood stove, to make the classroom warm in the winter. And those are all things that are also led by students. So the seniors are the job heads for each kind of area of jobs, and they are the ones that are teaching the younger students how to do that job, giving them consistent feedback. And so we have this culture that has kind of stemmed from that in terms of a real resilient culture, right? We
Mhm.
can really do hard things. The concept of needs, not wants, like we're going to live somewhat simply. And then also that we are going to work in partnership with each other, give each other feedback, opportunities to grow, so that if somebody does make a mistake or if they're struggling with something, it's really about how can we help each other learn, grow, and then make better choices and really investing in ourselves for the future.
Right. No, that's fantastic. Yeah, because again, as a parent of a seventh grade boy who loves, he does summer camp up in Maine for 3 4 weeks every year, and just he comes back so happy, right? So
Exactly.
as I sit here during the podcast, you and I may be having a different conversation
That
about his
sounds great.
camp
Yeah,
at Midland, right? You mentioned again all of those wonderful things. You mentioned the academics. I'd like to dig into that a little bit because
sure.
again, as a parent who has high expectations for their children, not just me, but I think all parents. And what you just described sounds great. But at the end of the day, if I want my kid to go to college
Sure.
or somewhere beyond, obviously Midland, what do you say to them in terms of the quote great academics that you said earlier?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think one of the lovely things about being in such a small school is that teachers know every single individual student exactly where they are and they know how to challenge them. So when we think of the spectrum of learners, folks that might be struggling, but also folks that need extra challenge, that teachers can really work with them individually in their class to make sure that they are working on their skills at their level and helping them to progress regardless of where they're starting. Our average class size is 10 students, right?
Wow.
So sometimes it's 6, sometimes it's up to 12, but we really don't go above 12. And so, that ability to be in discussion in those really tight-knit small groups is truly amazing. And then, like any boarding school, the educators are also the coaches, they're their advisors, they're sitting down with them at dinner. So the level of relationship that they have with the
Mm.
adults on campus, like every single student is incredibly well known and seen and heard. Nobody can fall through the cracks, which is amazing. We also have the opportunity for students to do independent study. So every single senior, by the time they're a senior, they actually do either a senior thesis or a senior project. And so we work with them, help them scaffold that, but they are really kind of the brainchild of creating a project for themselves and then seeing it through to completion. So, last year we had a huge variety of interest. So we had one student who created and coded his own Midland video game, right? And then he actually, on an experiential Saturday, a couple of them brought other students in, taught them how to code and create their own character for the game, right? And then they were actually in the game too. We had students that were designing and creating their own mountain bike trails. So literally working with local partners in Santa Barbara, learning about the physics and dynamics of how do you create a really good mountain biking trail? How do you need to slope the curves and all of that? And then he made an actual mountain biking trail that we're now using with our mountain
Oh,
biking
that's
program.
amazing.
And so, you have this opportunity to not only be in classes that are really tailored to you and helping to progress you as a learner, you also have this ability to find your passions and then pursue them deeply. And we give that freedom as well. A lot of our science classes are incredibly hands-on. We work with, UCSB. We're able to partner with our land neighbor at the Sedgwick, where they work with UCSB and have a ton of different researchers. So when we're doing field science, we're actually doing real field science that will end up being published, right? Which is a pretty amazing opportunity for students. Our math curriculum, we have an incredible math team here. And so students, regardless of whether they're coming in at Algebra 1 or as a freshman at Calc 1, right? We can support them up through these incredibly high levels of math and calculus and really can challenge them to do their best, which is pretty
Right.
amazing.
Right. No, that's fantastic. I know you said you've been there for 2 years, but I'd be interested to know, sort of as I extrapolate out here, feedback that you've received from universities. Again, I know Midland
Yeah.
isn't super old, right, in sort of the, not from 1892, right? Not one of the,
Well, we are almost 100 years old. We're going to
Oh,
be
wow.
celebrating
Okay.
our centennial in seven
There you
years, which
go.
is pretty amazing. So the school
Yeah,
was
no,
actually
that's
founded in
fantastic.
1932. And we actually have a really rich history of our students going to Ivy League schools. I think that that's something that when we think back in the day in the early 90s, everybody was trying to go to Yale and Harvard and Princeton, and that hasn't really changed, right? But our students are getting into a huge variety of colleges, right? So when I look at our list of where our seniors went last year or where they were accepted, where they've
Right.
ended up going, right? They're going to Berkeley, they're going to Dartmouth, they're going to Bowdoin, but then they're also going to Santa Barbara Community College because
Right.
that's the right fit for that student.
Right.
right? And so we have a really amazing college counselor, and I would assume that most independent schools do, where they're really helping the students to find what is their best fit. What is the thing that is going to help them get where they want to be in life, right? And I think
Mm.
there's so much that's happening right now at that upper level of education where there is questioning of like, as we look at AI and how that is filtering into our world, what is the purpose of education and higher education, and where are our students going to find success in a way that that feels really good to them for the future?
Right. No, absolutely. And sorry for misspeaking in terms of the age of the school,
Oh, it's
right?
all good. It's all good.
No, but I agree. I think too often schools or families, and I think parents are really guilty of this, thinking what's the best school for my child and not
Yeah,
necessarily the best fit for my child, right? Finding
exactly.
sort of the fit, and then you sort of overlay the actual school with that, right? So we have a 10th grade daughter. I'll digress for a second. And this past
Sure.
summer, we went and saw lots of different schools, not because we wanted to look at those specific schools, but we wanted to show her lots of different types of schools, right? So do you
Yes,
like a school
exactly.
that's 10,000 students plus? Okay, so that puts you in a certain bucket of schools. Do you like it,
Right.
1,000, whatever the qualities may be, and then you sort of find within that niche, if you will, what her best fit will be. And so I
Right.
appreciate that sense of sort of best fit, if you will.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I was just going to add in too, I think that one of the interesting things that I've been looking at lately, and I don't know if you've looked at the statistics for the number of students that end up dropping out of college in the first year is staggering right
Oh, wow.
now.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I have really come to see and love about boarding schools is that students are able to get those independent living skills
Right.
before going to college. So it's a little bit of a controlled environment where it's like a soft launch into
Right.
that independence, right?
Right.
Where they are needing to deal with, how do I do my laundry? Okay, I need to clean my room. How do I deal with a roommate that I might not necessarily get along with, right? And so all of these different elements that they would otherwise be facing in college for the first time, they get to do in high school, where we are supporting them to have those conflict conversations if we need
Mm.
to, and really help to mediate those issues, so that they then have those skills to handle those at a much higher level when they get to college as well. And so, the percentage of boarding school students that drop out of college is so much lower
Oh, wow.
than
That's fascinating.
yeah. And
Yeah.
part of
No,
that I
and
think really is like they've already had the experience, right? They know how
yeah.
to do
And
it.
yeah. And to answer your question, no, I hadn't looked at the sort of the most recent statistics on that, but
Yeah.
the logic and the reasoning makes perfect sense, right?
Yeah.
What you just said, right?
Yeah.
And remind me how many students in Midland again?
80. So
80.
approximately
Yeah.
20 per graduating class.
Right. Yeah, exactly. You described obviously earlier sort of the physical part of Midland, a lot of the really great school culture. I'd love to know maybe one or two specifics. What do you find? What's sort of the most successful two or three things right now going on at Midland? And then where do you find what are the one or two greatest challenges? And it doesn't have to be
Sure.
with any in any one area, but just in general, where are you finding sort of the most areas of success? And what have you and the leadership team identified maybe as one or two areas of sort of continued challenge, if you will?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I started, I mentioned the jobs program earlier. I feel like that's something that we've really dialed in here, where and it works on so many different levels, right? It helps us to maintain the campus. It
Hmm.
allows us to keep some of our costs down so that we can put more of our funding towards financial aid for students. It really allows every single student to see that they are needed and have that purpose. So that's something that I think is incredibly important when we think about students that might be facing different levels of anxiety, depression, etc. That ability to like have a purpose, connect with others, get genuine feedback right away is just incredible.
I was gonna say, I'll come your way at any time.
Thank you. And so sorry about that. And some other things that I think are going incredibly well. All of our kind of outdoor programs right now are just off the hook. So, we are our outdoor leaderships, or our students who are getting out onto the property, they're able to become what are called stewards. So once they've done outdoor leadership trips where they've gone backpacking for a number of days, they've done a steward training, they get their wilderness first aid, and then they can take students camping on our property without an adult there. And like talk about independence and just like elevating that level of accountability and capability.
Right.
It's pretty impressive. Our horse program right now also is incredible. We got a new horse
Very cool.
director last year, and she's just doing absolutely amazing things in terms of making it accessible to everybody. So I have a 4-year-old, and
Okay.
early in the fall, she was like, all right, we're going to do pony rides. And all of our students were supporting the young faculty kids that are getting out on the horses. So there's like two Midland kids that are, standing next to the horse, and then these little like 4 and 5 year olds up on the horses. And it's that, I think all of those things like really, it's about coming together as a community.
Sure.
Right. And so I think one of the things that I'm really proud of for Midland is that because we're small, we're incredibly intentional about the way that we approach any challenge in our community, that it just creates a true sense of belonging for people and really allows them to be who they are. And I feel like that's incredible. So I'm really proud of that. Some areas where we're always looking to improve. I think part of the challenge with working with competencies in academics is that a lot of colleges and universities are like just starting to understand, what does that mean? How can that help us as a college or a university have a clearer understanding of who a person is as a learner, as a student, as a whole human being, and how would that then benefit the college or university if they accepted them? And so,
Right.
we still have traditional transcripts that have that kind of Carnegie unit seat time alphanumeric grading. But then how do we really clearly communicate our portrait of a graduate and those competencies and skills so that those can dovetail a traditional
Right.
transcript? So that's something that we're really working on right now. And we have kind of a strategic plan around that's looking out over the next 3 years so that
Right.
hopefully, in 3 years, we're actually going to have every student be able to have not only that more kind of conventional transcript, but also this really cool alternative transcript that can dovetail that to show kind of a more visual, holistic picture of who the student is, what are their skills, what are kind of the things that they really are thriving with. So that's something that I'm really excited about. It's something we're working on, but it's always a
Right.
challenge, but
For sure.
it's
Yeah.
really exciting. Let's see what else. I think one of the things we're always wrestling with, and this is probably true for most schools, is in thinking about, the dreaded discipline word, right? Like how do schools handle discipline differently? And we're really trying to lean into how do we see any choices that students make that lead to, negative outcomes as a learning moment. And so, whether that is a small thing like, really struggling to turn in assignments in on time, or if it's a larger thing where it might be a roommate conflict, or even because we're dealing with teenagers, drugs or alcohol use.
Yep.
And so
Sure.
how do you approach any of those in a way where you're able to acknowledge where they are at developmentally, really talk to them about the why of what is happening, and then really coach through like what is a way to recognize any harm that's been done to the community, restore any of that, and repair any relationships, but then
Right.
also use it as a learning moment to say, what am I going to do differently in the future? So Midland has what's called the LAP system, and it's something that they've had since the inception of the school, and it literally is doing work for the school. So if you do something wrong, you get LAPs. That basically means you're doing work for the school, whether that's cleaning gutters, helping to weed the farm or something like that. But we're really trying to work in some more restorative pieces to that as well, and thinking about how we can have really clear connection to, choice consequence for a lot of these things that might be happening. So that's something that, I think it would be really great if any school in the world had the magic secret answer
Right.
for that. But we're working hard to try and make sure that we're really thinking about where students are at right now in terms of their development, how the landscape of mental health is kind of playing out in the world right now, and do the best that we can to support the students.
My most recent school where I was principal in the district leaned heavily into the restorative practices piece, I
Yeah.
think, of the discipline. And it's not to say, and oftentimes parents would get frustrated with me because they would say, well, what happened to the kid? Or nothing
Right.
happened. Or,
Right.
and I'd have to say very, very kindly, well, there are consequences for their actions, and it's not
Right.
your child, number one. And so, trust that we're doing what is best for them. But the
Yeah.
way we're going, the way we would approach, let's say, something that happened with a first grader versus a fifth grader or older, if you will, it is different and it should be different, right? But
Yeah.
I think the phrase that I used to use a lot was break it, you fix it, right? And it could be
Love that.
you've broken a relationship, you've literally broken something that you threw on the ground, whatever it may be. And so now that you've broken it, okay, so that's fine, that's done. How do we fix it? And there are structures, right? Restorative circles, restorative friendships,
Yep.
friendship circle, all of those things that
Yeah.
I think repair that over time. But then there's
Yeah.
also potentially, in addition to that, a consequence as well, right?
Right.
And so I think some parents would equate restorative practices with like fluff or nothing happened, things like
Right.
that. But I think there's a natural pairing, if you will, between the restorative piece and, if you punch somebody out at
Right.
recess, you've
Right.
lost the privilege to be outside,
Yeah.
right? Like, and
Yeah.
so, but that's not the only piece either, too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, no, I appreciate that. Um, in terms of, just to go back very quickly to school culture, and I
Yeah.
know, again, you're relatively new, but in terms of schools as they progress and get better, if you will, some school leaders I've spoken to have talked about this idea of sort of good enough or feeling like the school is good enough. Maybe our scores are really good, or
Mhm.
our students get into great universities. What's your thought or advice to school leaders, to other folks, to try to ward off that from happening, right?
Mm.
What do you
Good
try to
enough.
tell what do you try to tell yourself or the folks around you to make sure that doesn't happen?
Yeah, I mean, part of it I think is really looking at when we think about the world around us, right? It's not stagnant. It doesn't
Mm,
stop and stand still. It's always changing. Change is the one true constant, right? And so when we think about what's changing in the world, we also have to think about what is changing in our students, what is changing with our families, what is changing with any of the dynamics that are happening internationally or politically. And so if we sit back on our heels and say, that's good enough, then we're really not paying attention, right? We need to be constantly thinking about what is happening. This is an opportunity to be lifelong learners as professionals, right? We are professional lifelong learners. And so when we think about, every student and every class and every conglomeration of families has its own dynamics. And so to think about, every single new class that we have is another opportunity to learn about a new group of folks and think about how can we challenge them to be their best. So it's not just about our best or
mm,
good enough as a school.
sure.
It's how are we helping them to be their best and put their best foot forward and to show them what's possible, right? If we say good enough, then we're stopping short of what's possible. And so I think just having that opportunity to really think about
Right.
what's possible, and there's always room for improvement, always.
Always. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think when we all learned about the growth mindset, right? I think for a lot of
Yeah.
us, that was the thing that sort of unlocked, I'll speak for myself here, sort of this idea to lean into the mistakes, to
Yeah.
know, okay, we're progressing, we're not there yet, right? That phrase
Right.
yet, or that word yet, I feel like pops up a lot there.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, for sure. So Hannah,
Yeah.
just to
Can I
close
can I
here,
add in one more thing?
please,
I
yeah.
think when people think a lot about, okay, my assumption is that when people say, "Oh, we're good enough," then they're probably just in a phase of navel gazing. They're just looking at
Mm,
themselves,
that's it.
right? And I think that another way to get out of that is to always be looking at what is happening around you at other schools and other places. Who's doing what best? What is a new and innovative idea that's come up? What can we learn from each other? It's one of the things that I love about independent schools in general is how we can really support and learn from each other, and to take ideas, adapt them for our own schools, and to always be adapting and evolving.
Right. No, for sure. Uh, well, Hannah, I want to thank you for your time. To close, I always give the guest the opportunity to do two things. Number one, share again anything else about yourself, Midland, that you would want people listening in to know. Again, how can they get in touch with you, either you personally or the school? And then if there's any advice that you would give to any school leader, independent, charter, public, anywhere in between, just about sort of any lessons that you've learned so far on school leadership.
Okay, so let's see. Maybe I'll start there. Lessons for school
Okay.
leadership. Um, uh, because I'm a relatively new head, I feel like I've been getting a lot of advice over these last
Mm,
year and few months. One of the things that I think has stood out to me the best is that, like, as a school leader, you were hired for a reason. You are bringing some special sauce to your school that nobody else can. And so don't be afraid to be yourself, your authentic self in that leadership to inspire others. So
mm,
that's number one. In terms of what is really like what I'm excited about that's happening at Midland right now, we've been really trying to lean into how to connect with parents and not just parents of our students, but also parents in general, thinking about what are the lessons that we have learned about what helps support students and what's going on in the world right now. So we actually started a webinar series where we've been reaching out to parents. So we've had two of them so far, one about mental health and wellness, one about connection and community, and the third one is actually next Tuesday. I can give you the
Sure.
information if you want to post it. That's going to be looking at actually academics and success and happiness, and what we often think people think equates to success and happiness, but then what is the research actually showing in terms of
Right.
growth and development for students, and how can we help them find that and bridge that gap? So, you know, really trying hard to connect with parents and let them know that they're not alone. Like, this is something, you know, these issues are things that every parent is dealing with, and we can all be in it together, to help support raising these young folks. I think in general with Midland, this is an absolutely incredible place. We're always looking for who is going to be our next best fit. And so, Peter, as you were saying, how your seventh grader loves going to camp, if there are other folks who are like, oh my gosh, my kiddo comes back from summer camp and is the most alive that I've ever seen them, consider thinking about Midland for a high school
Right.
education, because that aliveness, that spark that comes to kids that can sometimes go out in more traditional settings, it really does brighten when they come to Midland. So just to consider, what are you looking for, and are you hoping
Right.
to find a place that you can see that spark again?
Awesome. Hannah Nelson, thank you again, the head of school at Midland. For now, I will thank you for your time, and we'll be in touch soon, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Peter.
All right. You're welcome.
All right, take care.